Welcome back. So we are in this module called Omega, and in Omega module we are now looking at a very interesting topic which is into descriptive and predictive analytics. Here we are going to talk about the basic concepts of hindsight, insight and foresight. So welcome to module 1.2 of communicate the story using data insights. So here we will talk about how we can actually interpret the data, and the major part would be that, okay, what is the difference between these three segments? I mean, when we talk about hindsight, insight and foresight, I'm going to give you a very simple example to understand it better. Now, talking from the perspective of, as I said, that this particular entire program, the initial phase, definitely I need to set the tone. I need to set the objective. I need to set the power of how you can narrate the story. And then we will completely, once we move on to, so this is not a PPT based program. So as we move inside, we will see a lot of demos actually happening to this particular segment. So here as well, I'm going to talk about the entire journey of data. So we call it as descriptive, and then we have the prescriptive and predictive. So I'm going to show you a very simple example. Now, if you talk about, let's say, descriptive analytics, we talk about what has happened in the past. So we talk about what has happened in the past. Then we say that, okay, when we talk about business intelligence, so this is where why it is happening. So we talk about why it is happening. So these all things are a part of the descriptive analytics. So the past, the historical, when we slice and dice, when we actually divide the data and try to model the data, visualize the data, everything from the past data, we call it descriptive analytics. Then what happens? We move on to the insights part. Then we actually are talking about current scenarios. We talk about current scenarios, what is happening. So I'm talking about what's the reason it is happening. So maybe I'm talking about the current scenario. This is where the exploratory data analytics comes into picture. And then finally we move on to the predictive and prescriptive part. So in between we also have something called a diagnostic analytics. So there are different sections, there are different terms that we use over the period, and the idea is to move to the predictive world where we actually do the forecasting. So the forecasting analysis actually. So we have descriptive, then we have diagnostic, then we have prescriptive, then we have predictive, and then we have cognitive. Now let me give you an example, very simple example. So just imagine when you go, God forbid, you should all keep well and fit, but in case you get sick or let's say some illness, due to some illness, you go to the doctor. Now the first thing the doctor asks is that, okay, tell something about, how it has been, what are the symptoms, how you are feeling, what is that? So you talk about your illness, you talk about the symptoms. Now in doctor's mind, doctor has already thought that, okay, or already got the points that, okay, these are the symptoms, so which means that I need to give this kind of medicines or medications. But sometimes what happens, the complications are there are some complications with the illness or the disease, and then the doctor says that, okay, why don't you get some tests done? So please go to the lab and get these tests done. That is the diagnostic part of it, primarily. So this is where we talk about the diagnostic part. Now what happens, based on the diagnostic and based on the symptoms, the past history of the patient, what happens is the doctor calls in the patient again and say that, okay, I understood everything and I'm prescribing some medicines to you. Now this part is called actually the prescriptive analytics part. Now what happens is, with the prescriptive part and with the diagnostic, with the help of diagnostic and with the help of descriptive, all these things, the doctor writes a prescription saying that you should do this, you should take this medicine, and only not medicine, says that, okay, you need to change the dietary plan, you need to do some exercises, some gym and all this stuff, change your lifestyle, food, habit, everything. This is the prescriptive part. The doctor also tells that, okay, with this prescription, and with this all symptoms, with this diagnostic, the tests and labs and everything. So I say that if you do these things, then you will be all good within 10 days, 15 days, 1 week or something like this, and do report me after that. So now that is the part of predictive. Now what happens after all these things? You are the person, you are actually the person who is going to take the decision. So you started with a symptom, you started with an ailment, illness, and then here we have the predictive and the prescription along with you. Now it's you who is going to take the action. The decision lies with you actually. And that is the part of the cognitive part. This is where your thought process, your cognitive capabilities comes into picture. So when people say that, okay, technology and robots and AI have taken into the world, and then chat GPTs and all these things are coming up, and then I would say, jobs are going and all these things, I say, hold on to your horses. It is not the case. So technology is going to come anyways. Technology is going to come. So, do you now see any postman today? So hardly we see that. Even if you go to Google and type postman, you are going to get the APIs of postman. It's not the postman. So a postman today is actually the API testing platform. So things have changed, things have gone a complete change and makeover. Technology is coming up in a big way. Anyways, it's there. Just imagine a bank today. You don't have tellers, you don't have people, cashiers. So the world has changed. And if you talk from the perspective of, why are we talking about only about technology? You go to manufacturing, robots have taken over. Now if you say that, okay, we will still work with the same manpower, with all the risks and hazards that we have got, so we are not talking on the same lines in that case. So same happens with technology. Now all these information, all this intuitive information, technology will give you, data will give you. But to action it, to understand and action it, that's your chance, that's your scope, that is your actually the cognitive insights that you have got with you. Now the idea is actually to communicate with this data. There is a very specific data model or the process model that we have for analytics. That's what we are going to see in detail as we move to the entire module over here. Here are the 9 steps of strategy decision making. So starting from understanding to making the plan, understanding the who's and why's of the data. And when we say who's and why's, so there comes the 4 important concepts of data. So first is, when you talk about data, the first thing that we need to understand is the 4 V's of the data. So namely the volume of the data, the variety of the data, the velocity of the data. These are the 3 prime ones. But then sometimes what happens is we also get overwhelmed with data, and that's why we have brought the 4 V of data, which is the veracity of the data. That talks about the usefulness of the data. And data magicians like us and data professionals like us actually can tell you what to do, what not to do, what data is useful and what data is not useful. So that's what we are going to see in detail as we proceed with this entire section. So that was from the perspective of data and insights, and how do we talk with data in terms of predictive, prescriptive and cognitive models actually. Now in the next model we will talk about the data models and the effective analysis, and then I'm going to show you some advanced BI techniques. So that's what we are going to see in our next module, which is coming up next. Thank you so much for being with us. Enjoy the sessions and thank you.